I just shot what is probably the biggest buck of my life. Hello and welcome to another episode of Death by Bunjie. If you are new to Death by Bunjie, or even if you are an old-time friend of Bunjie, please consider going to deathbybunjie.com and signing up for our free email newsletter. It is free, and of course, you can unsubscribe at any time. On this episode of Death by Bunjie, we're talking big bucks. Now, this is not a channel about shooting big bucks. It says that in the description to every video on Death by Bunjie. It's not as though this channel is just about going out and chasing big bucks, but every once in a while, big bucks happen. Bunjie and I had already been to Maryland for the early CROSSBOW season. That's what I like to call it because it starts in September, and we don't start here in northeastern Pennsylvania until October. So for me, it's the early CROSSBOW season. We've had our ups and downs with accuracy issues. We've had a dry fire this year. We've had some shots that didn't go exactly as planned, but I've got all of those issues ironed out, or at least the best that we can expect to do so. We pack up the car and head south to the old line state for whitetail hunting. We are fortunate enough to set up in my favorite tree stand in Maryland, a nice little clearing back in the woods, an agricultural setting where they have now cut all of the corn. This is a tree stand that has been very good to me in Bunjie. We successfully harvested 2 deer in 1 sit last year at this very tree stand. And this year we shot a nice spike buck in velvet. You can go watch those other videos on this channel. Walking into that tree stand for an afternoon sit, we went across the cornfield that had been cut, freshly cut and all harvested, and you can see that there are deer in the area. Some of the tiniest little footprints I've ever seen, but also a really nice set of footprints. That is the kind of sign that gets you excited. For our first sit in this tree stand, you can see that the guide has replenished the corn supply at this location. In Maryland, you can hunt over bait. I do like doing that when I go to Maryland, so I certainly take advantage of that opportunity. It's new to me because I didn't grow up doing that here in Pennsylvania, that's for sure. Corn does not guarantee success. I've said this before, there are no guarantees in this business. Even though Bunjie and I have hunted in Maryland for 8 seasons now, can you believe that? We have not seen a big buck over corn piles. I've been in the presence of big bucks down there during a rainstorm. I saw a massive buck move through some milo once years ago, and I also had a really nice buck walk the entire distance across a soybean field only to be spooked off by neighboring rifle hunters, or shotgun hunters as it were. But I've never had one come in front of the corn pile. But nonetheless, we're hopeful. We're out there. We're here in Maryland making the best of this trip. We're going to hold out for a big buck and see what happens. Now, in my experience in this clearing, the deer always come in from my left. If you're looking at the corn pile from the tree stand, the area off to the left has a nice water hole, and I've always seen deer come in from that side. They always come in, they sometimes stop for a drink at the water hole, but make their way across that clearing out in front of me, coming over to the corn pile. Now, because of that, just to play it safe, I walked in as far out in front of that stand as possible and came in a little bit to the right of the corn pile. I didn't want to get my scent all over the path where they might be coming in. On our first sit at our favorite tree stand in Maryland, we saw a fawn come in and out to that corn pile over and over and over. Seeing deer activity is always something I'm looking forward to, always something I am willing to sit quietly through. I love seeing deer, and this fawn was no exception. In fact, I'm thinking that the more time that this fawn spends in my presence, the more likely other deer will follow, other deer will come in. And sure enough, while we're waiting, patiently, Bunjie and I wait, eventually we do see other deer come into the area. There are does making their way in. However, they're a little bit nervous about the corn pile. It's a lot deeper, a lot longer than it was before, and that makes them a little bit skittish. I think that they're going to come back later. No takers that afternoon, but it was a great opportunity to sit and watch that fawn off into the sunset. That's not the end of our Maryland trip, however. Bunjie and I do return to that tree stand for a morning sit on our last day of this Maryland hunt. Bright and early, we make our way into that clearing, following the same path so as not to alert the deer, following the same path to make sure that we don't leave our scent all over the ground where we would want to walk in. We walk in on the far side of the target corn pile and make our way to that tree stand and get set up. As the sun comes up, I can see that there has been a drastic change in the corn level. So the deer have definitely been in this clearing. They have definitely found that that corn is replenished and definitely returned for dinner at some point, overnight, what have you. I did see some movement early on that morning off in the distance through the trees. However, that deer did not make its way into the corn. It wandered around close to where I had come in, and I'm wondering if that didn't deter them from coming into the clearing. Eventually, we do get some close-up deer action. They're looking around, very cautious, however, and unfortunately, they came in from exactly the wrong angle. They came in from my right, which is exactly where the deer don't come in. They're not cooperating with me, if you know what I mean. So these deer come in, they're very cautious, they're wandering around, they can tell something is up. They, in fact, stop almost immediately when they walk across my path, where I had walked when I came in. They start smelling, they know that something is up, and the lead doe is very cautious, kind of keeping the rest of them from going all the way into the corn pile. Now, again, I'm happy to see deer activity. I'm happy to have deer in the area because that might entice other deer to come in. But I don't like seeing deer that are alert in my presence. That's not good. If these deer blow and run out of there and make a big ruckus like does tend to do, then the problem with that is it might discourage other deer from coming in, and that's no good. I play it safe. I don't move. I try to keep as calm as possible. As much as I'd love to end this little scenario and take a shot at one of these does, I've already killed 5 deer by this point in the season. In fact, Bunjie and I have had so much success this season that really at this point in the season, even though it's still just mid-October, we are buck hunting only. At this point, I'd love to have just a little bit more venison to top off the freezer and a nice set of antlers to hang on the wall if the CROSSBOW gods smile on us and make that happen. But I think that's really what we're looking for here. We're not looking to shoot any more does at this point. Fortunately, they eventually make their way off, and they don't blow on the way out of there and alert the entire area that there's a problem. They just make their way out of the area. At this point, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, well, it's 9:30 in the morning. Most of the deer are probably heading to their midday beds to sit there and ruminate and chew their cud and all that good stuff. So what can I do to get any buck in the area off his feet and get him to come in here and check out this corn pile, get him to check out my location? I am guilty, and I know this, of overusing grunt calls. I'm always tempted to blow one out in this direction and blow one out in this direction and blow one behind me and blow one back over there and go in every direction to make sure every deer in the area has heard my precious grunt tube. When I'm out in the woods, when I hear a buck grunt, it's usually a short, quick little grunt, just enough to say, hey, I'm over here. That's really, usually, all that they do, especially in October, in the middle of October. So I have made a conscious decision recently to not overuse the grunt call. In fact, what I decided to do was take this out, make one short, brief grunt, just to let those other deer know, hey, there's a buck over here. Come over and check out the situation. And then I'm going to put the grunt call back into my bag, put it away until the next time I hunt. Because I'm in a tree stand, I'm elevated, I don't want to blow it off up in the distance here and confuse the deer as to why there's a deer up in a tree. I pull out that grunt call and I just put one little grunt down toward the bottom of the tree stand. And that's it. So the grunt tube is back in the bag and I'm just going to sit and wait out the rest of the morning. 10 minutes goes by and I'm thinking I should probably pull that grunt tube back out again and start tooting away again. But instead, fortunately for me, off in the distance 50 yards in front of me, I see some legs and I realize that, hey, we got some action. We got a customer. We got somebody coming in. I see some legs, and not only do I see legs, I quickly realize It is a big-bodied deer. This is not the same size deer that I have been looking at on the rest of this trip in Maryland in my previous experience. This is not another doe. This is a good, mature buck. At least I can tell from the body. And then I get a quick look at the antlers and I get even more excited. Now I can tell exactly what this buck is doing. He's looking into the clearing to see who made that sound. He's looking off to the left, he's looking off to the right. He's looking to see who his competition in the area suddenly is. Who dares come into his area and start grunting away like that? I'm a little bit nervous because he's standing right on top of my footprints, right on top of the tracks where I came in to that clearing, where I came in only a few hours earlier. He is spending less time smelling the ground and more time looking around to see what's going on. I finally get a full look at this buck at 50 yards. Now, I rarely even practice out to 50 yards. I would not take a 50-yard shot, not on this deer or any other one. In fact, it would kind of not make sense to do that because if he's coming to this area, I'm hopeful that he's come this far and thinks, as long as I'm here, I might as well get a bite to eat. He makes his way behind the trees and he is there for 10 more minutes. He's standing, just looking around, surveying the situation, looking around to make sure it's safe before he makes his way to the corn pile, if that's what he decides to do. Now, on one hand, I'm real nervous because this is a big deer. On the other hand, I really have all the time in the world. I'm sitting in the tree stand being quiet. The cameras are already running. I'm leaning forward, set up for the shot. The crossbow is ready. Bunjie is ready for a shot. We are going to take that shot only when the time is right, only when the right shot is presented. And there's really nothing to be nervous about. We're just waiting it out, waiting for that shot to be presented. He makes his way around cautiously out into that clearing. He's not alert. He's not on edge. He turns, he makes his way toward that corn pile, and once he gets there and gets situated, Bunjie and I, we're going to take that shot. That's right. Today is going to be the day he's not going to get away from Bunjie. I wrote that song about exactly this situation, about exactly this opportunity. We take that shot. It's a little high, it's a little farther back than what I'd like, but it was a broadside shot, and I'm pretty confident that we got both lungs. This is a big deer. It's got big lungs. It's a big target. He had his head down, he's got his leg forward. This is a perfect shot opportunity. He's not alert, he's not looking at me. He is ready to take an arrow, and he runs off back from where he came off into the woods. I feel pretty good about it. It was a pretty good shot. I felt good about the shot, a big target. I think we got a double lung shot. But then I go back and look at the footage, and I'm a little bit concerned as I'm looking at it on the camera right there in the tree stand. I get a little bit concerned because of his reaction. He doesn't kick his feet up the way I would like to see on a good heart shot or a good double lung shot. Instead, he lunges out of the area like a big old mule. Not exactly the reaction I was hoping for, and that makes me pause a little bit. Maybe I should give him a little bit of time. I get down out of the tree stand, gather up all of my gear. I walk over to the corn pile, no further, but walk over to the corn pile just to inspect the situation and realize my arrow is not there. He's taken off with the arrow. Now this is a big deer. I'm shooting 280 feet per second here on an older, slower crossbow with a mechanical broadhead that opens up to 2 inches. Not surprised if I don't get a complete pass-through. It was a good shot. I think we've got a dead deer, but I'm going to give him a little bit more time just to make sure. I just shot what is probably the biggest buck of my life. I don't see the arrow. Saw one spot of nice blood. I'm going to go back to the hotel room and see if I can figure out what we're dealing with. When I looked at it on the video, the shot looked good. Looks like it's in the lungs. But he didn't react the way I wanted him to. He didn't kick his legs. Let's see what we got. I take all of my gear back to the hotel room. I set it up on the laptop and I look at the footage and I slow it down and I stop it on impact and realize I made a good shot on that deer. I'm confident it's time to go collect our buck. Well, I'm back. I feel pretty good about the shot looking at it. It's a double lung shot. Just the question is how far he went. I thought I heard him crash when I was in the stand also. I was pretty happy about it until I looked back at that footage. He just didn't react. What a big deer though. So a big deer like that can go quite a distance. Let's take up the trail and see what we got. Back to the corn pile. I inspect the scene. We find a little bit of blood here, a little bit of blood there. I make my way through the woods following his path without too much difficulty. Get to the 20-yard line and find my arrow, which is soaked in blood, and it tells me that it passed through that deer entirely because the veins are totally soaked with blood. I keep making my way through the woods, looking at the blood trail, and I start to see that this deer is bleeding heavy. Sometimes on a high shot like that, you don't get the blood trail you'd like, but in this case, we're getting plenty of blood to follow. I've been looking for about 30 minutes. The trail has come out, zigzagged through trees, and then wrapped around. It's heading almost 90 degrees, almost turning around, coming back toward that clearing. But look what's right over there on the other side of this American holly. This is the 10th crossbow season I have spent with this same crossbow. This is not a channel about shooting big bucks. Or is it? It is a great story to tell. I'm so glad that I got an opportunity to share that with you. There is plenty more crossbow action coming your way. I still have hunts from Pennsylvania coming up. The entire 37 days of awesome is ahead of us. You haven't seen any of that yet, but you will. And if you check back, I've got some more great Maryland hunting action coming your way as well. Please follow that email list. Go to deathbybungie.com and check that out so you can stay up to date on all the happenings here in the kingdom of Bungie. Thank you for watching this hunt. And until next time, all hail Bungie!
Second state is #1 in my